they must really see something special in him, because you usually don't see guys like that getting that kind of commitment. And from an ownership perspective, from a management perspective, there's only so many fringe guys that you're going to be able to sell your owner on in terms of, hey, this guy hasn't established himself yet, but we want to sign him to a multi-year one-way ticket. Are you okay with that? So he's been able to deliver on that, and that's been really important considering the bet that management made on him.
Let's dive into, you know what? I was going to do OEL and Tyler Myers. Let's skip it. I think we know why they've gotten a D on your rating, in their grading. I mean, they've not been great, and they've been split up as a pair that was last year. I think I remember seeing you guys' grades, and it was pretty high on those two from the expectations you had, but they've not been playing together, and they've not been really great in their roles. It feels like their partner is always the better defenseman on a night, and that's unfortunate for two guys that are making over $13 million when you combine their salary. So another guy that hasn't lived up to a ton of the expectations that a lot of people had for him, specifically what he's doing at 5-on-5. Conor Garland, you guys gave him a C+ over at The Athletic on your article. So we finished last season. Conor Garland did 47 points at 5-on-5, which was tied with JT Miller for the team lead. Put up a ton of points at 5-on-5. This guy was effective at creating. He was also the leader on the team in primary points at 5-on-5 with 37. So 17 goals and 20 primary assists last season. This year, Conor Garland has 1 goal and 5 assists at 5-on-5. He was healthy scratch for 1 game this year, 19 games in. He can't seem to find a great fit on a 5-on-5 line right now. What are you seeing? What brought you to giving him a C+ as we got the isolated impact as well at offense at 5-on-5 here from Garland? It's very different this season than it was last season with the expected goals for.
For sure. I think right off the bat is kind of what you mentioned, right? Garland is a player, makes $5 billion, doesn't really contribute on either special teams, right? He plays a power play, but I think he had 3 or 4 points on the man advantage last season. He isn't someone that you rely on to contribute really in any significant capacity on special teams. So you need him to be a workhorse, an absolute 5-on-5 monster. And that's what he was last season, right? We're talking about a player who was top 30 among all NHL players, or all NHL forwards, I should say, in terms of his 5-on-5 point production. This year, 1 goal and I think 3 total primary points at 5-on-5 after being the club's most dynamic point producer at evens. That's a significant step back. And it's kind of like what you mentioned, right? Is what I'm seeing is he hasn't found chemistry. We know he has an abstract playing style with, I think this Canucks team has a lot of guys that like playing north-south in terms of just trying to force turnovers, create havoc. Garland's a different attacker. I think as we all know, the way he creates offense below the goal line, and it just hasn't really fit with anybody on this Canucks roster. Where, I mean, I mentioned this when I did a hit with you guys recently, was he wasn't really fitting well with Horvat and Miller, despite the fact that Horvat and Miller seem to have chemistry, and despite the fact that they seem to generate a decent amount of zone time. We saw in the more recent games,
he almost disappears from that duo, right?
Yeah,
it's strange to think that even Höglander feels like he's more visible with that pairing, which is very strange because this is a guy who produced last season.
Definitely. And we saw Boudreau then sort of shift him down the lineup. And even from there, I don't know who he fits well with. I don't know who he has chemistry with. I don't know how to put him in a position to succeed. We definitely haven't seen him look as dynamic, right? Like, we talk about the spins and turns. Like, how many times have you gone, wow, at a spin or some type of edge work with Garland? He used to be a master at creating sort of playmaking chances below the goal line, where he'd draw defenders and he'd draw attention with his puck carrying ability off the cycle and in the offensive zone. And then once he'd get behind the defenders, with the defenders would kind of have to turn their back and defend Garland that way. And then it would leave the slot sort of unguarded, and there would be passing lanes. And that's how Garland created so much of his offense. That's what's been missing. I don't know what exactly the solution is to getting that back on track, but we just haven't seen enough of it to this point.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's what what you just said there. Like, his movement and unpredictability was what created these passing lanes that opened up things in the slot. Like, that was so impressive, is that, yes, the way that he moved with the puck, if you're just thinking of like passing lanes opening or how the passes are looking, like, it was interesting to watch how often he was able to, whether it be a pass to the slot or cross ice, like, it opened up such quality scoring chances that I don't really know what's not working this year. I agree with you that like we haven't seen as much of that movement, that aggressiveness, that maybe even confidence in his own
Yeah,
game to kind of play that way. I feel like you see it in little spurts here and there. Like you do see it like, oh, that's a that's the Conor Garland that I know who makes a move like that. But yeah, it's like it's I wonder about like, being healthy scratch, being moved up and down the lineup. But at the same time, I don't remember like him being an absolute lock with another player last year when he was in the lineup
yeah,
either. Like it wasn't like he had to play with Pedersen or had to be with Miller. It felt like he was just kind of a guy that got slotted into the lineup and could bring something to a 5-on-5 line.
definitely. The other two other things that are interesting. Number one, I wonder how he feels about his own game right now, because I remember talking to him at the end of last season, and to my surprise, he was really pissed off at
Mm,
his own performance. And he essentially told me in the interview at the end of the season that he didn't feel like himself at all that year.
yeah.
He just sort of felt that there was something off, that he's the sort of guy that doesn't like a lot of change. He likes the same routine, doing the same things every single day. He's a creature of habit. And obviously moving from Arizona to Vancouver was a huge transition, new country, new teammates. So we've seen, compared to last season, that he's taken, and I actually disagreed. I actually thought he played pretty well last season, but to see him sort of take a step back now, including the sort of healthy scratch, which I'm sure he was inside pissed off about.
Yeah.
I wonder
We've
like
seen
how he
healthy
feels
scratches
mentally.
help. I don't know if that helped Garland,
No,
right?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So I wonder where he's at in terms of his own game. The other part I will say is, and this has kind of been the saving grace with him, it's kind of it's obviously not a huge bar to clear, but it matters, is the fact that he hasn't been a defensive liability. Like, we're saying all these
Right.
things about how he hasn't been able to create as much offense, and nobody's going to mistake him for a defensive dynamo. But at the same time, the Canucks have still generally won their 5-on-5 matchups when he's been on the ice. Like, his goal differential, I think, is they've scored 8 goals and allowed 6 when he's been on the ice at 5-on-5. Like, the Canucks just don't get scored on when Conor Garland's on the ice for whatever reason, which matters